Okay, today we're going to show you how to protect wheel bearings on garden items. Here's a sample of a wheel bearing that is ubiquitous and common. It's a standard 1.5 inch approximately wheel bearing that is encased, and that's good for protection of the bearings inside, but it's bad in that you can't re-grease them, clean them. They're made to where once they go bad you throw them away and buy new ones, but you have to purchase, there's 2 for each wheel, and if you've got a garden cart that has 4 wheels, you've got to buy 8 bearings and then replace them. So you can also re-grease them if you like. There's the slot where the grease can come out and water can get in, and that's what causes the bearings to fail. I did find a way to re-grease these, but that's the subject of another video. So whether you have new ones or re-grease old ones, after you're done, you're going to want to protect these bearings from sand and water, as well as the grease from drying out and coming out. And I've discovered a way to protect these bearings with a very simple method. We're going to simply cap this. Now I found that the cap off of a standard gallon milk jug fits this bearing perfectly. In fact, it almost snaps on to create a perfect fit. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this cap full of grease before I place it over the bearing, and not only will it protect the bearing from water and sand and dirt, but it'll be a grease source underneath it. Now the only thing we have to do at this point is to cut a hole for the axle. But before we do that, I'll show you some problems that occur in the real world. There's a standard hand truck, and there's bearings up in there somewhere that's all corroded and bad, and that's a critical part for the operation of this item. This is a utility cart. Again, the same problem over time. The bearings go bad in it with the rust. Alright, so I'm going to show you a quick way to get this hole in the center for the axle, and the hole has to be perfectly round and perfectly centered, because if it's not, then grease can come out of that hole and water can come in and you're right back where you started from. Alright, so over here I'm working on a cart, and I have a wheel that I want to place caps on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this cap by placing the wheel on, and then I want to bring this up to where I can center the cap over the bearing, but yet this wheel be high enough to where I can feel the axle underneath. So I've got a series of washers that are pre-measured to give me the exact height I need. Alright, once everything is perfectly centered, I'll center this cap directly over the bearing. I can feel the shaft through the cap, and then I'll take a hammer once everything is centered, and then I'll tap on it, and what that will do is it will make an indentation into the plastic that shows exactly where it needs to be cut. And then I will take an X-Acto knife and cut directly on that line very carefully to create a hole for the axle shaft exactly where it needs to be. Now this particular axle has 2 parts. One is the threaded shaft, which holds the retaining nut. Other axles may be just a straight shaft for a cotter pin, but with this particular axle there's a 2-step process. I have to cut the hole for the threaded part and then cut another hole for the axle shaft itself. So what I've done here is I've already cut out where the threaded portion goes, and the way to cut out the part for the axle shaft is you place this over the axle and then place the deep wall socket centered and tap on that, and that will create a second indentation of exactly where you need to make your second cut. Now once your second cut is complete, then the plastic casing, and this is off of a vitamin water bottle, by the way. All of these caps are about the same size, so there's a number of sources for it. And I cut it to where it's a snug fit, and you can see how it slides. It's a very tight fit, slides down the axle shaft. And then once that's there, then I will place the wheel over that and make sure it's centered over the cap, and then cut a second one to place over that. Tight fit, and then it's protected. Now if you don't have enough axle play to do this, let's say you've only got that much, you can actually take your X-Acto knife and shorten this by cutting along the rim here, or you can even place it this way, which takes up no room other than the thickness of the cap, and then place a washer that covers the inside, and that will still provide cover over the bearings themselves. Now what I've also done is I've actually taken some washers that fit the cap closely, as well as the diameter of the axle. This provides strength on the back side of the plastic cap because these are somewhat flexible, and so this provides additional strength. So now as far as the final assembly, the backing washer goes first. Then what we'll do is, now these washers, believe it or not, have a top and a bottom when they're pressed. As you can see, it's pressed from the top and it has a rounded edge, and this is the bottom, it has a sharp edge. And so if you put the sharp edge down, it could cut into the plastic, so I always like to use the softer edge on the back of the plastic. So I'll actually grease this, place it first, pack this full of grease, and then slide it on. Place the wheel, well first I'll pack this area full of grease, and while I'm at it I'll pack this area full of grease, and then when I slide the wheel on, it'll slide onto the back cover, and then I'll take the top cover and slide that on. Again, this is packed full of grease. Slide that on, nice tight fit, and then place the backing washer on, and then the retaining nut all the way down, and then you end up with a finished product that looks like this. Now if you want to see how this was assembled, if you want to hang on to this video, keep watching. I'll disassemble this to show you exactly how the finished product looks. Packed full of grease. Backside, the bottom cap packed full of grease, and the stiffening washer behind that. End of video. If you have any questions, just shoot me an email or a message, or subscribe if you have any questions or improvements along the way. Thanks for watching.